Well, CBS News has learned former Vice President Joe Biden will jump into the 2020 presidential race tomorrow. The former vice president will make his announcement with a video on Twitter before holding a fundraiser tomorrow night in Philadelphia. Biden will then hold a formal campaign event in Pittsburgh Monday. Many polls show the 76-year-old leading the pack of Democratic hopefuls. Ed O'Keefe has more on Biden's bid.
This country can't afford more years of a president looking to settle personal scores. We've got to get moving.
Former Vice President Biden will enter the race for the 2020 Democratic nomination in a place he's never been, on top. The latest polling shows him leading the large field of 2020 Democratic hopefuls with 27%, 7% ahead of Senator Bernie Sanders.
We will take back this country. I mean it. Don't give up.
Biden's PAC sent an email to supporters Tuesday hinting that an announcement is coming soon, though he's been toying with the idea of getting into the race for more than a year.
What's the holdup? What's the holdup? Putting everything together, man.
Admitting back in February his family was on board while he wasn't there yet.
They, the most important people in my life, want me to run.
Since then, at least 8 women have alleged that Biden made them feel uncomfortable in the past, actions for which he later partially apologized.
I'm sorry I didn't understand more. I'm not sorry for any of my intentions.
Biden has made a run for president twice before. I sat down with him in late 2007.
Once I'm covered, I'm convinced. Me matched against Obama, me matched against Hillary, me matched against anyone else. I will do just fine.
Joe Biden!
But Biden ended up placing 5th in the Iowa caucus. He dropped out, but later became Barack Obama's vice president. He chose not to run in 2016 after the death of his son, Beau, the year before.
I regret it every day, but it was the right decision for my family and for me.
At 76, Biden will be the second oldest candidate in what's already a crowded field. And while he's popular with working-class voters, it's unclear if he'll enjoy similar support from an increasingly younger, more liberal Democratic Party less familiar with his more than 4 decades of public service. Ed O'Keefe, CBS News, Washington.
CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns is at a forum in Houston where 8 Democratic candidates are speaking today. So, Caitlin, before we talk about the event, I actually want to ask you about Joe Biden. He'll be starting in a big hole when it comes to fundraising. How does he plan to sort of make up that gap at this point?
Well, if there's one way that shows how different a field this is compared to when Biden had first run, it's that voters or candidates this cycle are very much focused on small dollar donations. Remember all of that grassroots fundraising we've been talking about, this idea that the small dollar donors are kind of the prized constituency this cycle. Biden is going to have to rely on larger donations. He is getting in after the first quarter closed, so he's going to have a lot of ground to make up as all of these other 20 or so candidates have had a full quarter to fundraise. So that's going to be his biggest challenge, is not only raising the money and courting these big dollar donors, but also making the political decision to do so and explaining to voters why he's doing that. That's going to be a challenge. I will say, however, after talking to a lot of Democratic donors and former bundlers who aren't used as much this cycle, they are looking forward to kind of getting in from the sidelines.
And tell us a little bit about the forum that you're at today. How are candidates, what are they exactly hoping to accomplish there?
Right. So we are here in Houston, Texas for the She the People Forum. This is a presidential forum where we're going to hear from about 8 contenders. So that's nearly half of the field. And they're focused on women of color. That's going to be the audience here today. A lot of organizers and activists and voters here. So you're going to see people like Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, and of course, Texas natives Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro speak to the audience here. And they're going to talk about issues like healthcare, education, but also racial inequality issues. Criminal justice reform, access to health care and education are going to be the top concerns. Now, why Houston and why Texas? Texas is going to be a key primary state this cycle, and that's what's different from cycles past. Texas is going to vote in the Democratic primary on March 3rd, the same day as California, so it's going to be a Super Tuesday. It's a huge state, but a state that Democrats feel like the demographics are changing in their favor, and that's why they're focused on Houston in particular. Houston Houston is changing rapidly towards Democrats. The population here really favors them. It's about a quarter African American and 45% Latino. They saw their voting double in 2018, and they elected 19 African American women judges, and they feel like they've got a lot of momentum here to capitalize on.
Yeah, CBS Saturday Morning had a fascinating piece about those women. It's worth going back to watch. But I want to ask you, you actually asked Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee about what she thinks about Texas as a battleground in 2020. Here was her response.
I would certainly say don't count us out, certainly for a vigorous primary, but don't count us out for the general election. We are poised to be blue or purple. We are a new growth state, if you will, with a lot of old history. But one of the things that we have that is so special is the strength of women and the strength of women of color, the strength of African American women. Our agenda is going to not leave one stone unturned to try to turn Texas blue, and we will be relying on women of color.
I know she's optimistic, Caitlin, but the truth is a Democratic presidential candidate has not won Texas since Jimmy Carter back in 1976. So what kind of candidate does Texas want in a Democrat? Moderate, progressive? What are they talking about in the primaries?
You're right. It would be a huge uphill battle. Remember, in 2018, Beto O'Rourke came as close as any Democrat has in this time, in this era, coming within 3 points of Ted Cruz in that Senate race. And because of that election, people here on the ground felt like they were able to organize, that they were able to mobilize voters who hadn't really turned out before, especially in a midterm election. So they're hoping to capitalize on that. I've been talking to activists all morning who say that the kind of candidate that will do well here is someone who is progressive, but who talks to certain constituencies on issues that they really care about. I mean, healthcare, as we've talked about, is chief among them, but also on issues like access to education. Women, of course, are going to be the backbone of the Democratic primary, especially African American women, and they want to know how these policies are going to benefit them and their family. And so that's the message that they want to send to a lot of these candidates here. And I can tell you this probably won't be the first time, or probably won't be the last time we'll be here in Houston covering these candidates. They are expected to come through here a lot over the next year.
You're absolutely right. We look forward to hearing more from you and your reporting at the She the People Forum in Houston, Texas. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you very much for joining us.